This right here is the deadweight loss impact that tariffs have on an economy. Now, in economics, a deadweight loss refers to the loss of economic efficiency due to government intervention. This prevents the efficient allocation of resources within a free market, leading to an overall reduction in available resources. And tariffs are one of these government interventions, creating inefficiencies. Normally, in an economy, the equilibrium price is where demand equal supply, and world trade, having access to a wider market of more competitively priced products, shifts the domestic price downward, increasing consumer surplus in an economy. Essentially, you can buy more with the same capital, increasing efficiency. But tariffs have the opposite effect. They shift the price back upward. This reduces consumer surplus, increases producer surplus, and of course, it generates tax revenue for the government. However, there's always going to be deadweight loss or inefficiencies due to this artificial act by the government. And this is why the introduction of a whole new wave of tariffs is having a negative impact on projected global economic growth, with the UN predicting that global growth could slow to 2.3% versus 2.8% in 2024. But this impact does vary based on country, and it looks like one country that's going to be hit particularly hard is China. Now, China did see a boost in exports back in March in an attempt to front load these tariffs, but for China, this was essentially the calm before the storm, with some economists expecting the growth rate of the Chinese economy to slow to just 4% this year. And that would be a huge impact on the Chinese economy, far surpassing the impacts of the first trade war, where China still had economic growth throughout that time of 6.7%. And for context, back in Trump's first term, the overall effective tariff rate on China was upwards of 19%. But the scope of those tariffs were much more targeted. They usually targeted a limited amount of Chinese goods within certain sectors. But this time in 2025, we have a universal 10% tariff on every country in the world, with a whopping 145% tariff on all Chinese imports. This is why some economists expect Chinese exports to the United States to fall by 2/3 this year. And this has the potential to reduce GDP growth in China this year to just 3.4%, and an even more astonishing 3% next year. And this would be far below China's even recent economic growth rate, hovering around 5.5%. Now, it is true that China's GDP growth rate has been steadily declining, but before the introduction of these tariffs, the projection here was still 5 to 4.5% GDP growth, and not dipping below 3% until next decade. GDP is composed of consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. And when it comes to the United States and China, the relationship here is pretty simple. China, due to their investment in various industries, export a lot of products to the United States, which is a consumption-led economy. And with this massive shakeup in US policy, this relationship is essentially coming to an end. Now, of course, this will also have a negative impact on the United States. As we mentioned in the beginning, this will reduce consumer surplus and create deadweight loss in the economy. However, theoretically, this will raise some tax revenue and increase the producer surplus. It could also drive up domestic investment of new facilities, infrastructure, along with government spending if the government wants to use that tax revenue to have a positive impact on the economy. But I do want to be clear that this government intervention, messing with the market's ability to efficiently allocate resources, is a net negative for the global economy.